Hello everyone, Rob here, and I'm back with a special bonus Christmas episode prior to the official relaunch and the brand new series of the podcast under the new name, This Might Just Work, Ideas for a Tired Planet. I'm currently recording and batching episodes to release that new series in January next year, but after speaking to this guest, and as you'll find out, they are a director of a film which is currently fundraising and is about to be released. So I thought, why not do a Christmas bonus episode that's a little bit different to the usual format and get it out in time for Christmas as a little Christmas present for you all. So yeah, this is an episode which talks about the film Derek versus Derek, which was really excited when I came across the concept. And in this episode, I was lucky enough to chat to the director of the film, James Dawson, who has a really acclaimed history of directing all sorts of different films. As he'll tell you himself in this episode, he became passionate about this topic of biodiversity loss, and he wanted to make a film about rewilding. And one thing led to another, and he ended up with this amazing concept called Derek versus Derek, where he explores two different farmers' perspectives on the topic of farming and nature. One, Derek Gow, maverick rewilder, who is turning his farm into a rewilding paradise, a bit of a rebel, a bit of a hero to many of you, I'm sure, who are from this background. And then over the fence, his neighbour, Derek Banbury, who is an arable farmer, who has a slightly different view on what farming's purpose should be and how nature rewilding fit into the picture. So yeah, I'm really excited about this film. We get into all sorts about this topic and how James approached it and what making the film was like. It's a bit of a short episode than usual, but a bit of a bonus one, as I say, before Christmas and before the new season launches next year. And as I say towards the end, if you like the sound of this film and you can donate some money for the crowdfunder, then head to derekversusderek.com to find out more. And yeah, I'll be back at the end with a few more bits to talk to you a little bit more about what I'm planning for the new season. But before that, and until then, please do enjoy this episode speaking to James Dawson, the director of Derek versus Derek. So hi, James. Great to have you on the podcast.
Hi, Rob. Good to be here.
So I came across this idea you've had, this film you're making, while I was scrolling on the internet the other day, and I saw it and I was like, oh my God, this is as someone that's worked in the rewilding space for a long time now, and has been having a lot of conversations trying to convince a lot of people that this is a great thing, and having conversations with farmers and stuff all around the country. And it really struck a chord with me. And I thought, that's really fascinating that a film director has come across this idea and this story, and it feels very timely. So I think a great place to start, if that's okay with you, is just to hear that origin story. How did you, as someone that's not like myself, kind of living and breathing rewilding every single day, kind of how did you come to learn about this challenge, the challenge of biodiversity loss and rewilding, and yeah, how did you come to have the idea for the film, I guess?
Okay, well, I used to, when I was a teenager, work on farms in my summer holidays and, well, in the winter ones as well. And I spent a lot of time outside in the fields. And that is getting to be near 45 years ago. And when I go out into fields now, even I notice that there's a change, and even in the space of 45 years, that the loss of wildlife has been significant even for me to notice. And I think I would be surprised if you would be able to find a farmer who really, in all honesty, wouldn't disagree with that idea. So I'd always thought there was something going on. And then I read a book by a man called Professor David Goulson, who's a biologist at Sussex University. And he wrote a book called Silent Earth. I read that and I thought, well, confirms everything I thought about what was going on. And the extent of the loss is quite staggering, really, because you've got something called baseline syndrome, which means that as you grow old, you start off young, you think the world has always been like this, and then you get a bit older, and you're where you measure what things from is sort of course, like if young people today realize the extent of the loss, what kind of world their parents used to live in, or their grandparents, I think they'd be staggered that there's so little nature. Anyway, so I thought, well, how do you make a film about this? Because it's interesting. Maybe I could find someone who is trying in his or her trying in their way to sort of to restore biodiversity. And I thought, well, there is this rewilding movement. I'll look at that. So I went around and there's a really nice man called Professor Alistair Driver, who was part of Rewilding Britain. He's introduced me to some people, but by and large, they're nice people, but they were well off landowners who had decided, or farmers, but just decided to do this with their land. And because I've got a background in filmmaking, and I've worked for the BBC and Channel 4 for quite a long time, 30 years, I knew that I wanted to find someone very relatable. And then I found Derek Gow, who's very relatable, I think, because he's a working class Scot who's found his way to a small farm in Devon. He's a maverick. He is quite loud. He's quite noisy about what he's trying to do. And he's trying to do lots of things all at the same time. He's not just closing the farm gate and letting nature come back.
Mm-hmm.
He's sort of really very actively trying to find his way to making getting nature to return. But he's also breeding all these animals, these near extinct animals. So it felt like there was a great deal to film. And if I filmed him I thought, I'll do it over a long form. I'll make a long film. I can go and work in other projects and come back every year and film with Derek and see how it progresses and see what difficulty he has, see whether or not it works. So I did that for about a year. And then I met, by chance, his neighbour, another man called Derek. I mean, it wasn't quite by chance, because I said, I'd like to know what your neighbours make of all this. So he's pointed me to it. He said, no, I don't mind you seeing them. And so I met Derek Banbury, and as soon as I met him, I realised there's a very different type of film to be made, because in their relationship, there was the guts of, you could play out all these tensions and difficulties in Britain's countryside between farmers on the one hand who say, look, our job primarily, a lot of them say this, is to grow food. And that's our job. We need land to do that. And that's the point of what we're doing here. And, we need food security. It's not enough, that we worry about a war how that will impact us. We need food. And then you've got the rewilders and the conservationists who say, no, we need nature. So I thought, well, and they sort of typified this relationship. And also they lived alongside each other. And so he used to look over his hedge at what Derek Gow was doing, and he'd see him, the wild boar turfing up the fields. He'd see him digging all these ponds, and he thought it was just total madness, and he was destroying a perfectly good farm. And what was nice about Derek Banbury is he's a really open, affable, charming man who loves farming. He loves what he does. He's passionate about it, and he's a very appealing character. And I thought this could be terrific, because I liked both these characters. And what I was really pleased about the prospect of is that it wasn't going to be a bitter enmity that they were exploring. So much of this kind of debate feels very polarized. I don't know what it's like from your end, but I just felt that people get easily angry with each other. And these two, even though they really disagreed, they didn't hate each other, and they could talk to each other, and they did. So that was really strong. And then I started filming with the pair of them. It allowed me to tease out some of the issues in this debate. And what was wonderful, of course, is from my point of view, and not wonderful from his neighbour's point of view, but Derek Gow was impacting his neighbourhood in lots of ways. I mean, the wild boar were escaping, the beavers had also escaped, and they were swimming all over the place and damming up things. The hedgerows were an issue between them. So there were things that you could have make stories about. And of course, as the rewilding land developed, and as his project over time grew, literally, and you had problems with the breeding of animals, all sorts of things were happening. You could focus on that, but those allowed one to see whether or not his project was going to work and what impact it was having on his neighbours, particularly the other Derek.
I mean, Derek Gow in the rewilding community is a bit of a legend already in terms of, because he just does things. He's a bit of a rebel. Kind of people latch onto that, and a lot of the frustration around why don't we just do things differently? We're running out of time. Biodiversity loss is going to start really impacting us. So let's just do stuff. So that really appeals to people. But then, as you kind of tease out, that it's not everyone's already bought into that, and we've got a long way to go in terms of convincing the other farmers and then the general public more widely.
I mean, what was very important to me as I talked to the Banburys and Derek Banbury is that farmers, it's not an easy life.
No.
Well, I knew that from my experience when I was working as a teenager on farms. They are in there's an economic dilemma they're facing. Yep. They need to make ends meet. It's quite hard. And I wanted to reflect that in the film, because I think farmers are the key people in this world who are going to be the key agents of change. So you need to understand what their problems are and what their perspective is. And they've got a good point about food. We need food.
Yeah.
We need. So I sort of think it was, even though it's a sort of a false premise in a way, with food or nature. Well, of course we need both. But but there seems in these debates, it's either one or the other. Well, of course it's not, but it allows you to play out these issues in a film.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, for farmers I speak to, they get mainly frustrated because it feels like there's no plan. One minute they're told to do, particularly farmers that have farmed over multiple generations, they were told to take out all the hedgerows, and now they're being told to put them back in. It's this kind of unclear, what is the plan? Where do we want to grow our food? Where do we want nature? It can be both, but I think farmers are just a bit confused at what role they're meant to play. Are they meant to do a bit of food, a bit of nature? Are they meant to go all in, on some land for rewilding, and then we use some land purely for agriculture? And I feel like, I completely sympathize. I've definitely softened a lot working with farmers and hearing the stories directly over the years. I used to be quite naive growing up in a town, kind of, the only farms I would visit would be to walk through, and that was it. And even for me, felt quite disconnected from where food was coming from and that kind of thing. So until you get out and speak to people, you realize actually they're not evil people. They're not, a lot of the time they're not doing this to deliberately trash nature as some people kind of would portray them. It's very much, what do the economics push them to do, and then also a kind of general lack of clarity of what they're expected to do, right? So,
and you have to remember that I'm trying to, we do address this quite directly in the film. Farmers were charged with feeding the nation during the war, and that's what they got on and did. And then they were given the tools to do it, all these wonderful chemicals and herbicides and pesticides, which just, the Green Revolution, whoopee, off we, and it's brilliant. And look at all this wonderful food. And there is an abundance of food, relatively speaking, but it has had a big detrimental impact on nature.
We've talked about rewilding a few times on the podcast before, but for people that are new to listening or haven't listened to one of the rewilding episodes, I guess it'd be interested to hear your kind of thoughts when you first saw Derek's farm, and kind of a best description, I guess, you could give in terms of like, what's Derek done so far, what's he trying to do, and how were you? I guess you were quite blown away with some of the stuff he's already done there.
Well, when I found him, he was just giving up the last of his sheep. So he was sort of finishing as a farmer. He said, this is it, I'm finished. It's the last, they're going. That's it. Now the whole farm is going to be rewilded. And by that, he means try and restore nature in not how it used to be hundreds of years ago, but just create habitat in which you might see lots of different species return. And and because where he is wetland mire largely, and he said no one's ever made any money out of this farm.
Yeah.
He set about digging over 100 ponds. I mean, really, he just keeps digging ponds everywhere and then planting them. All the fauna that he flora that he can find that used to be there, he's trying to get it back. And he's doing that at scale everywhere. So he's got a lot of people working there. And then he says, right, he's got a background as a conservationist, and he's got a lot of experience breeding waterfoals and beavers. So he said, right, well, they'll be very much on the land, and we'll work to do that. So there's a lot of waterfowl releases. There's and he's breeding white storks, and he wants to let those out as well. And there's been a bit of, as you'll see in the film, there's something happens there, which is rather lovely. So he wants to bring back nature that used to be here before we, got rid of it or wiped it out. That's his goal. And so he's doing all these things. He's not just sitting around, as I say, waiting for nature to come back. He's really actively bringing it back.
And the big thing which struck me, which really appealed to me when I saw the trailer, is the fact that there's this comedy element to it. And I'm guessing a lot of your background is working in, if I'm right, is kind of comedy films and comedy work. So, was that always something you set out to do when you were kind of thinking about creating a film, when you were just looking at Derek Gow's work? Was there always going to be a kind of comedic element to kind of bring in a wider audience?
Well, it's always in the back of my mind, because I think you want to make a film which will attract a wide audience, and I think people like to be entertained. Your job is to, you're entertaining people at the end of the day. When you make a film, you're not just lecturing to them. And I think the more you feel like people feel lectured to, the less interested they are. And that's the other thing that was a joy when I met Derek Banbury, because he's an entertaining, funny man. And Derek Gow is in his own way as well.
Yeah.
And then the two together were great chemistry. And it's a rule of thumb in my way when I look at people: would I want to spend half an hour with this person or an hour? And if you say yes, great. If you might not, they might not be very. You might always like these people. I like these two. I should make that clear. But when you're deciding what would be an interesting character to film, it's their interest that's important, not if they're likable or if they're that they tick all your supposed boxes about what people, what their ideology is or whatever. That's not the key thing.
I completely agree. I think the one, Clarkson's Farm is a good example of something in this space where it was the first time where sat around with my family, the topic of food security and things like that actually just came up naturally, because everyone had watched it for, as you say, entertainment purposes. People don't want to. So, people do like watching documentaries and stuff, but if it becomes to feel like homework, are you being lectured to, as you said, then it becomes less appealing to a wider audience. So I think that is the key. And I'm really excited to already talking about the film to my family and kind of people that aren't in the bubble, because I feel like it's a topic that I've discussed with them, when they ask what I do and what I work in, and there's a general interest, but outside of that core group of friends or family, it's a trickier one to have a conversation with someone down the pub about or whatever, who you don't know. Whereas if there's a film or with a bit of comedy element to it, with interesting characters to talk around, all of a sudden you can talk about these topics that are really key, but often just difficult to bring up, I guess.
Yeah, no, I agree. Right.
Without getting into too many spoilers or anything, kind of turning points, I guess, in the film for both characters, because they both come from quite different, as you said, quite polarized, different ends of the spectrum of the argument. As you were filming it, were there kind of moments of realization that you managed to capture, or did the film actually itself end up bringing them slightly more towards the middle? Without giving too much away, I guess.
There were there's big points of disagreement between them, and as I said before, that because Derek Gow decided to use wild boar to turf up his fields, but the wild boar have a habit of getting out and going into his neighbours' fields. So that was one of the first things that Derek Banbury complained to me about that he was having, and he showed me. He said, "Oh, look, I'm going to show you the fields where we've got these problems." I thought, "All right, okay, we'll go and see these." And so you'd look at the field and you'd hear his complaints, and then you'd go and see Derek Gow and his relationship with his wild boar, which is interesting. And he loved, he got a very soft spot for them. So that was funny, because most people would think it's unusual to be really friendly with a wild boar, and Derek Banbury was quite funny about them, as well as and he shot a couple of them as well. So, that once you came on his land, he feared the damage they were doing, so he got them shot. So that was an opportunity, and then once you realise that there's also other animals, like the particular beavers, who have escaped, and they're in the waterways, and there's a chance that those beavers are going to come up and see Derek. All the streams point towards the Banbury farm. So that was an interesting. That allowed one to explore what beavers were, what damage they might do in his eyes, and look at them. And that was great. So it allowed one to kind of. He said, "Oh, I've seen some terrible damage round up that field." So I went off and saw the damage that he was talking about, and that he said, "I wouldn't like that on my farm. That would be dreadful." And I thought, yeah, okay, I can see why you might think that.
Yeah.
But then, because he actually went to Derek Gow's farm and looked at the damage there. But I knew in the back of my mind that the damage that he thought was so awful was he might admire it at the same time, because once you get up close to a beaver dam and you see how wonderful the engineering is, he might be impressed with that, and he was. So that was interesting. And also in that scene, which was quite by chance, that Derek Gow fell over, and in the falling over, he scooped up a tiny little frog. He said, "Look, there's a frog." Now, and this, without the beavers here, this frog wasn't there. So it had the whole conversation about what this little frog was and how important it was for other animals' food source. And then it allowed, and he explained, what the aquatic life that had been generated, and all the way in which beavers were bringing this whole area back to life. And to his credit, Derek Banbury looked and thought, "Well, see what you mean." So there was a dialogue, and over the course of 2 years on and off filming with them, that we had scenes like that, and slowly Derek Banbury thought about these things quite carefully, and started to realize that there may be an issue. I mean, a lot of the film is about the difficulties he was encountering as a farmer.
Yeah.
And that in 2020, for the winter of 2024, there were really bad floods. So there's some scenes in the film about that and how farmers deal with that. And climate change is changing things for farmers and making life harder. And but we also looked at how the crops were planted, and what you do to get great crops. And he loved his sprays, and he loved his, and he loved how brilliant his maize of crop was. And so he thought it was wonderful. But, once you realize that what has gone into making that maize crop, you've got this wonderful abundance, but at the same time, and actually in that scene in the field with him, it was a very important moment, because he said, "Oh, I think it's fantastic, this crop." He's very proud of it, and it did look brilliant. But then he turned around and said to me, "Do you know, there's not nearly as many butterflies as it used to be in the field or in the hedgerows. I've noticed that. I mean, I look at my crops mainly, but I have noticed this." So and they said, "Do you see many butterflies on Derek Gow's land?" And so that was an interesting moment. And then then there was an opportunity later in the summer. He said, "Oh, let's go and look at Derek Gow's land, and we'll go and So we went off to film him seeing Derek Gow on his land, because he always wanted to go and look at some of it, because he thought it was such a looked at it over the hedge, thought it was a terrible mess. Looking at it firsthand was quite a good. He wanted to do that, and there it was a really interesting moment. I won't tell you what happened, but it was interesting.
Oh, well, I'm very excited to see the full thing. But yeah, that kind of conversation you had there rang very familiar with me in terms of they know, a lot of farmers know that things aren't what they used to be, and actually they talk about they used to see yellow hammers in the hedges, and they used to see more butterflies and bees, and they know that link's there, but like I completely, as you said, don't blame them for that. If you're offered more certainty, and you're getting squeezed and squeezed more on the margins, and being told by supermarkets that you have to produce things for small prices, otherwise they're going to move somewhere else. Then, and you've got the effects of climate change on top of that. Then I can while reaching for these kind of elements of certainty, it's a no-brainer. Yeah.
But also, if you look at it from their perspective, I think these stats are not right, but broadly speaking, I think after the war, they had about 30% of 30p of every pound that was generated that would go into their pockets. Now it's more like 8p or something like that, some really small amount. So that there's a great many middlemen or other people are taking this profit from what they do. So they are being squeezed, and if you're wanting people to change and save nature, then you've got to think about how much they're being squeezed and what, as you say, you try living on a margin like that. And anyway, so what was really exciting for me about trying to do the film was that, in a way, you're trying to make a film about something that's missing, something that's gone. And what was great about Banbury is that we could then explore with him what nature was like on his farm. So he had a lovely reminiscences about the curlews that he used to see when he was a boy. And that was really lovely to try but then I managed to get hold of some archive of what those curlews would have been like in the fields. He said, we cleared those fields over there. Yeah, we did that. We improved it. The government gave us grants to improve it. We drained it, ploughed it and reseeded it. And there it is. It's great land. It's improved, and we get a good crop from it. But then, of course, there's nowhere for curlews to live. And it sort of encapsulates sort of the story of modern farming. He misses them. He was told that that's what he should do, and he was funded to do it. So he got on and did it.
Yeah, it's fairly simple, isn't it? They move in the direction of where the money tells them to do, or what the government incentivizes to do, even if it's, looking back, it clearly had a price. There was a price to that, and nature was that. So I'm intrigued to, and again, without going into the realms of too many spoilers, but like where they will these always be kind of two characters that are a bit more on the outsides of the argument, or do you think there's a lot more farmers out there who are nearer the middle and probably easier to persuade, or do you think it is a case, just as with the world in general, that we're ending up with people that are either in column A or column B, kind of based on what you saw? Like, how hopeful are you, I guess, that we can bring people into the space where we need to get them to from a farming perspective?
It's a good question. I don't know is the honest answer. All I know that is when we had a screening the other week for the contributors to the film and the local farming community. It was a private screening, no tickets or anything like that. And what I found watching it is that it made me, it reassured me, because once you accept the idea, wherever you are in the countryside, whatever you're doing, if you accept the idea that nature has been depleted, badly depleted, and that there's a danger in that, not just for nature, but for us, because we rely on it,
Yeah. This is a human extinction story. Yeah.
Farmers know that as well in their guts. They know that. And Derek Banbury certainly did. So once you accept that idea, then what you do about it is up for grabs, is an open question. And that's fine. That's all I really want the film to do, is it allows one to open that debate about, okay, there's a problem. how do we solve it? Or it's not me, I'm not a farmer, but how does the rural community solve this? Because it desperately needs solving. Because we, as you know, if biodiversity continues to be lost at this rate, there will be a crisis. So, and we don't want to get to that crisis. So, it's better to solve it now, one way or the other. So that was always my hope, is that it would engender a kind of discussion and a meeting of minds. And that meeting of mind is around, yes, farmers love nature, but they also need to make a living.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's the dilemma,
From my experience, like there's a lot of, as with any group, I guess, like a lot of trend, a lot of like what's waiting for someone to lead and then eventually following, and some will be at the front of the pack and others will wait to see what's happening. And I've noticed there was some quite funny things kind of popping up. Like one a couple of years ago was that all farmers I seem to meet were trying to grow cricket bat willow, because they got out that you could sell to India like English willow, this very specific strange looking willow trees that you had to spot in the corner of a farm. Like, what are they? What's that? And they I'm growing cricket bat willow. It's selling for this amount of money, and it's going to be the next big thing. So for me, like that gives me hope, because I know it makes sense. Like everyone kind of follows what their friends and what their friendship groups are doing, etc., and what their community are doing. And I think the more that people like Derek Banbury kind of start to do a little bit, even if it's just tinkering around the edges a bit, that will very quickly, knowing what the farming community are like, could become quite a trend. And that's what gives me hope. I love Derek Gow and I love those projects, but like you say, I think for the average farmer, it's quite hard to see how that works within it. I mean, I don't know if Derek Gow you got into that topic with him around, how do we fund, how do we make money from this?
Well, it does come down to money, and I know all these government schemes are all trying to make for nature-friendly farming, but it needs to be resourced properly, and it's almost as if the current government doesn't really get that, and it's got to be done, and it's going to cost the taxpayers some money. And you do well. I was going to start going on about supermarkets, but there is a sort of pact with the devil going on somewhere. The cheap food.
I mean, that was my next question, or kind of in terms of how you're planning to get the film out there and do the screenings and stuff like that. I noticed you were focusing, trying to get this into the rural, like the agricultural communities as like a key focus, but I guess as well as with this point of food security and like this discussion around maybe we should be paying more for our food and it's hard for farmers and we should appreciate them more. How are you thinking about, I guess, like the different audiences you want to bring in? Is it starting with one group and then hoping that will bring more people in? Like what's the kind of strategy? It's a new world to me. I don't know how you you go about getting a film out there into the world.
Well, there's a conventional way. Obviously, we will talk to broadcasters. We hope maybe the BBC will take it. We don't know. They might take it in an hour-long form. We'll see. Nice. They might take it longer. We don't know. But broadcast it. So there's the public. And we hope very much that if we can get enough funding, we will have a theatrical release. So it go into cinemas. So I don't know, 30 or 40 cinemas around the country. But the primary thing that we're wanting to, because, well, not just because it's right, but also we had a really brilliant sponsor. They gave us a grant. It was the Redford Center in America, who have given us 2 grants that have helped us make. They're not big grants. They're generous grants, but they're not. They managed to cover production costs. No one got rich on it. So, but we've managed to make the film based on their grant and a private donor. So now we want to set about raising funds to an extensive impact campaign. And that idea is that we would try and have 600 screenings around the country in agricultural shows, village halls, film societies, pubs even. Take the film out to people, and we sort of have this idea that maybe there's a Derek versus Derek in all over the place. You'd have a Dirk versus David somewhere, or Tina versus Tracy somewhere else, so that there's a sort of this debate about the supposed two sides of this debate could come together and have a discussion about it based around seeing the film. That's our idea. And so you just push this discussion forward a bit in the farming world.
I love that idea of more of this being a series of different, you could tackle various different issues, different people. That would be really cool. In terms of getting the word out there, or, what are the best things we can do to help get this film out as widely as possible? Is it about finding venues? Is it about just spreading the word on social media? Like, what are the key things that my audience can do to help?
Oh, we've got a website. It's www.derek.com. We've also got a crowdfunder appeal going on at the moment, and that's, well, you can go to crowdfunder and put in Derek versus Derek, and you'll go to the page. We're looking for money for this impact campaign, so please, if you can give, that'd be brilliant. So it's a website. We're running an Instagram as well, so that's Derek versus Derek again. So please find us there, and you'll find all our, get a sense of our plans and what the film's going to be about. I mean, we're hoping we can start all this. We're hoping we will go have a big film festival release in June. I'm hoping it's going to be the Sheffield Documentary Film Festival.
Oh, nice. I live just outside Sheffield, so
well, you should come.
I would love to.
Not quite confirmed, but nearly. I hope we'll see. It's up in the air, but if that can happen, that would be brilliant. And we have in mind to do sort of a big event around it. It maybe have it on a local farm as well, so that we can have it at the festival, but also get a lot of farmers and various celebrities around this to kind of come along. So that would be fun. And then we want to roll it out as far as we can around the country.
Amazing,
really. And take these big Oxford farming conferences that they've got.
Yeah, and have you heard of Groundswell? That's what I can imagine being there.
Yeah.
They would love something like this, and there's some great shows out there, and farmers are very good at going to these these big conferences. You've got a captive audience there.
Well, agricultural shows are our big thing. We want to film and get a big marquee up, show the film in the evenings. Agricultural shows.
Nice. If you get it on it, like this one called Cereals, which is like hardcore arable farmers in the Midlands, which is, if you can get it screened there, that would be amazing, because I bet there's a few. I've personally been there and exhibited and had some interesting conversations with some quite hardcore arable farmers, but I enjoy that. Like with the film, like I think it's a big part of, we need to have those difficult conversations, and there's a lot of more middle ground than either person anticipates at the start. So
well, also what I was thought you were going to say, there's more middle ground than there is at the extreme.
Yeah,
I think that's true in a way. I know that they slightly typify the extremes, these two, but on one level they do. But on another level, they listen to each other. They have sympathy for each other. So it's not quite as extreme as you might think from the title.
Exactly. As with many things in life. Well, thanks, James. That was really fun, and love the idea. Can't wait to see it. Hopefully in Sheffield or wherever it might be, and I'll continue to spread the word. Everyone that's listening, do check out the crowdfunder and go to the website and to learn more, and try and get it into local halls or wherever it might be, in agricultural communities or wherever, and let's spread the word. Thanks a lot, James.
My pleasure. Good to talk to you.
So that's it for this Christmas bonus episode of the podcast. As I mentioned at the start, I am planning to release the full new series, one episode at a time, that is, over the months of sort of January, February next year. The series has been rebranded from Innovate Eco, which was really focusing on founders of businesses that are tackling environmental problems, to broaden the scope out to anyone and everyone who is trying to do something a little bit different, a little bit innovative, and tackle some of these big environmental challenges that we have. So a film director being the kind of idea that's completely different to the sorts of people I've had on the podcast before, but I really wanted to just talk to all sorts of people and find interesting stories for you. So I hope you like that idea, and we'll still continue to follow along, or if you're new here, then you'll follow along some more. And got all sorts of interesting people lined up from still some more founders of businesses, but also we've got academics, we've got some charity organizations, people that are just trying different things to try and throw everything we've got at this problem and make the world a better place. So yeah, keep an eye out, follow along on social media. I'm at Rob Reg on Instagram, on LinkedIn, etc. And I'll be posting some more clips and some teaser trailers as we build up to the launch of the brand new podcast in January. So I'll see you then. Until then, have a great Christmas and a happy New Year.